What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? Corbin Carroll's big night fuels the Dbacks to a bounce back win over the New York Mets in game number 2. And what has been the biggest Dback strength this season?
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. I'm Millard Thomas, host of this wonderful podcast. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, MillardThomas24downmyportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, just please follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for the personal account, Locked on Diamondbacks on Twitter, or follow me on Instagram, Millard.Thomas123 for the personal Instagram, or look up Locked on Diamondbacks on there as well. On today's podcast, we'll talk about Corbin Carroll's big night against the Mets in game number 2. What stats could we see the D-backs players lead the league in by the end of the season? And what has been the biggest D-back strength so far this year? We're going to be talking about all that on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. But first, I want to say thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms. So please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. But now let's get into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. Let's talk about that D-backs bounce back victory in game number 2. Because as we talked about on yesterday's podcast, I said it gave vibes to another NL East team that rolled in recently, the Philadelphia Phillies. They had a big game 1 against the D-backs just a few weeks ago. And then what did the D-backs do in the rest of that series? They won the next 3 games, 2 and 3 out of 4 against Philadelphia. I was saying on the podcast yesterday, I was getting the same vibes against New York Mets. Mets fans coming to Chase Field. They're loud. They're obnoxious. Gotta give it up to East Coast fans. They travel well, and they've been very loud this season. And they were very loud in game number 1 against the D-backs. But I had this suspicion, I had this hunch that the D-backs were going to come back in game number 2. And I believe they're going to win game number 3 and win this series because that has been the D-backs motto. Yes, they got swept to Tampa, but outside of that series, since June 1st, the D-backs are mowing down everyone. If they lose the first game of the series, it does not matter. They're still going to win this series minus Tampa Bay. And again, that series loss was because of the stadium of Tropicana. And so we got to see the D-backs with a big bounce back victory in game number 2, as expected, because we knew the D-backs weren't going to just sit on their hands after losing game 1. I knew they were going to come out with a fire in their belly in game 2. And we saw them offensively take it to the Mets early, put up 4 runs on them in the first 4 innings. And that's where everything kind of fell apart in this game right after that. But thankfully, the D-backs had Corbin Carroll on their side because he was really the MVP of this game. 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, 2 runs scored. Corbin Carroll, of course, has been on fire recently for the D-backs since June 1st, which is like our favorite date to use. Or not since June 1st. June 29th is like our favorite date to use. I think a lot of us just use July 1st now. So I'll go off July 1st. Since July 1st, Corbin Carroll now has 13 home runs. Since the All-Star break, Corbin Carroll has 12 home runs. And during that time as well, I mean, entering today's game, he had a 556 slugging since July 1st. This is a guy that has displayed a ton of power. So since July 1st, actually, he has 15 home runs since July 1st, 12 home runs since the All-Star break. So 15 since the first, 12 since the All-Star break, and we've just seen a steady uptick in power for Corbin Carroll. We talked about it on a podcast the other day. What has been working for Corbin Carroll? He has a different approach, a different, basically a different approach to how he wants to attack the zone. He has shrunk his zone. He's looking for more elevated fastballs, and that's what he saw tonight. That first one off Luis Severino was kind of just like dead center when you look at the K zone. He crushed it. Being in the ballpark, it was so loud off the bat. You could tell immediately the way it jumped off the bat, you knew that one was gone. Almost 109 miles per hour, 440 feet. He absolutely crushed it. Would have been a home run in all 30 ballparks. And then that second home run he had, off the bat, you didn't know immediately it was going to be out, but it just kept traveling. It was high and just kept going and going. And that was another pitch when you look at the K zone, high and elevated for Corbin Carroll. And right now, that's the pitch he's doing damage against. It was the pitch that really made him struggle earlier in the season. Now it's the pitch he's looking to do damage against. And that's what he's been doing the last few weeks. And he did it again today. Edwin Diaz, grand slam off him, a home run in every ballpark except the Giants ballpark. Just a fantastic game by Corbin Carroll. And he's had many fantastic games recently. And it's also the clutchness, which is just so it's the thing you don't want to overlook because, yes, it's one thing if you just have a whole bunch of these home runs in the fourth and the fifth inning or the second inning, but Corbin Carroll's coming through in big, high leverage situations late in game. He had that pinch hit home run, a few weeks ago. He had that triple that led to the Jake McCarthy walk off. He has this big home run, grand slam in the eighth night. Like Corbin Carroll, since he's been unlocked with the power, this D-backs record has gotten even better. The offense has gotten even better, which is crazy to say. And it's something we've preached the whole season. We've said the D-backs have been good this year. We've said the offense has been fine, but for it to be another level, we'll need Corbin Carroll to get back to the guy we saw in 2023. And he's starting to look like that guy again over the last few weeks. And he was phenomenal in today's game. Jock Peterson also had a monster home run as well. Gurriel continues to look better at the plate. He raised his average to 276. Adrian Del Castillo continues to do Del Castillo things. So the offense overall, very good stuff by them. The pitching, specifically the starting pitching, not the best. Eduardo Rodriguez, back-to-back starts where the D-back starter does not do his job. And Erod, this was a very good start to begin with because Erod was actually nursing a no-hitter through 4 innings. He was like, what was it, 4 1/3 before he like even gave up a hit or something. Like Erod was cruising through this game, and then all of a sudden in the 5th, everything just kind of fell apart for Erod. He was missing the zone a little bit. They were getting some base hits off of him and ended up just being a bad start overall after just one bad inning, like a couple of outs is what led to this bad start for Erod after cruising through those first 4 innings. And so the rotation now, couple of hiccups in this series against the New York Mets. Want to see the starters pitch better going forward. Did get to see elite bullpen, Kevin Ginkel, Ryan Thompson, Justin Martinez, all did their job. I did think Lourdes Gurriel, I thought that throw at the plate he made, the ball got there in time. It was a great slide by Starling Marte, a better tag by Del Castillo, and he's out. I mean, not much more Del Castillo could do, but maybe move his arm over like a half inch to the left. Just a fantastic slide by Starling Marte in that situation to avoid the tag and give the Mets the lead in that situation. But Corbin Carroll, of course, comes through later in the game with the grand slam and delivers the big D-backs victory. We got one more game in this series against the New York Mets. And again, like I've been saying after game 1, I think the D-backs are going to win this series. I think they're going to win that finale. David Peterson versus Ryan Nelson. The stats for David Peterson are very nice, but Ryan Nelson has been locked in over the last couple months, right? So one more feather in the cap to solidify Ryan Nelson's rotation spot. Go get us a series victory against the New York Mets. And let's move on to the LA Dodgers right after that. Now I want to discuss which stats we could see some D-backs players lead the league in by the end of the season in segment number 2. But hey, if you want to do some daily fantasy sports, then I suggest downloading Prize Picks because Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stats projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB, and you can get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. And if you're thinking about coming to an upcoming Dbacks game, then the best place you want to go to purchase your tickets is, of course, going to be Game Time. And right now, Game Time has the best offer for Labor Day because you could get 50% off Dbacks versus Dodgers Labor Day here in Arizona. Yes, Game Time is hooking you up. I'm going to say it one more time. 50% off Labor Day tickets. D-backs versus Dodgers could potentially decide the fate of the NL West and maybe even the 1 seed in the National League. And you get to go to that game for 50% off. Thank you, Game Time. And that's not the only thing they do because they're the best place for last minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy theater, and more. They have this little thing called all-in pricing. When you toggle that feature on, you can see the total cost of your purchase before you buy. So there's no surprise fees at checkout. Get a panoramic view from your seat before you buy too, which is just perfect. I love Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Let's discuss what stats the D-backs can lead the league in by the end of the season. This segment was inspired by an article I saw by Alex Weiner on Arizona Sports because he was basically posing the question, could we see Jake McCarthy and Ketel Marte both qualify and potentially win the NL batting title? So I want to expand on this article and also look at some other stats the D-backs could potentially lead the league in by the end of the season, because I never even really put 2 and 2 together, but there is, it sounds crazy to say, but there is potentially a world where Jake McCarthy leads the National League in batting average. It's insane to think about. It's such a progression and development for Jake McCarthy. It's a big reason why he's my probably favorite like non-D-back star, like non-Carroll, non-Marte, non-Gallen star. Like Jake McCarthy's my guy, Jake the Rake, Jake the Snake, and he does have a position and an opportunity to potentially win the batting title in the National League. Now, there's a couple things holding this up. One, he's batting 298. The league leader is around 308. I would have to check Marcell Ozuna. He was leading the league with that average the last time I checked. That was entering today's game. So he's around 308. Jake McCarthy, let's see what his batting average is actually after today's game. He's at 297. So he's probably within 10 points of the batting leader. So the issue number 1 to winning the title is he's going to have to catch up to the leader. And the issue number 2 is he's also going to have to qualify. The problem right now is Jake McCarthy doesn't have enough plate appearances under his belt to even qualify for the batting title. Like if Jake McCarthy qualified right now for the title, he would be tied with he would basically be 1 spot behind Ketel Marte for 5th in average in the National League, with potential to be even higher. Like the fact that if he qualified right now, he would be 5th ahead of Ohtani in average in the NL is insane. That's how good of a season Jake McCarthy has had. And for him to qualify, he just needs to continue this pace he's been on in terms of plate appearances he's getting every game, because From here on out, Jake McCarthy basically has to play every game, and he has to average 4.13 plate appearances per game over Arizona's final 30 games if he wants to qualify for the batting title. It's very possible since he's taken over in the second half of the season. Torey Lovullo's playing Jake McCarthy every day. He realizes Jake McCarthy is the best D-backs outfielder. He's giving him the respect of playing him like he's the best D-backs outfielder. So there's definitely a shot Jake McCarthy could do this. I think he probably won't. I think there'll probably still be a couple games too many where Randall Grichuk sprinkles in, or you just probably don't Jake McCarthy for one reason or another. Maybe he gets one of those Torey Lovullo rest days when he even has the platoon advantage. So Jake McCarthy, I think he just going to miss out on both. I think he's just going to miss out on both qualifying and winning the batting title. But the fact that he's even in the discussion is crazy. And then Ketel Marte, if he comes back, because they're saying he's targeting potentially next Tuesday against the San Francisco Giants, if Ketel Marte does that, he's definitely qualifying. He's definitely qualifying for the batting average. And then the only question is, can he turn it back on? Can he pick up where he left off and steal it from Marcell Ozuna? He's currently fourth in average right now, and he'll still be qualifying once he gets back from the injured list. The only question is, can he just pick up where he left off? Because if you could do that, you check Ketel Marte's numbers in the second half of the season, absolutely elite stuff. You could say Ketel Marte has been the best player in baseball in the second half of the season. That's how good Marte has been, obviously, for the Arizona Diamondbacks, and he's been fantastic all season long. So if we could get Marte back, I mean, he's batting like 360 since the All-Star break. If he could be anywhere near that for the rest of the season, he will have a chance to potentially win the batting title. So we could potentially see two D-backs winning the batting title by the end of the season. We could also see potentially Marte, if he comes back quick enough, lead the league in baseball reference WAR, which is used to be the holy grail of stats in Major League Baseball. It was like, oh, look at Mike Trout. He leads the league in WAR. He's the MVP. Now we never talk about WAR. Now WRC Plus is the go-to stat. I respect WRC Plus a lot more. I think it's a lot more accurate to the best players. When I see the WRC Plus stats, it always lines up to my eye test of who I think the best players are. WAR, I never felt like it was doing that. But for at least this season, we're going to care about WAR because Marte potentially has a chance to lead the league in WAR. He's only like 0.2 behind Shohei Ohtani, and Marte's like 12, 13 games, less games played than him. So he definitely has the opportunity once he gets back from the injured list. Corbin Carroll has an opportunity to lead the league in runs scored, which might sound a little crazy because we've seen Corbin Carroll struggle all season. Obviously, he's been a lot better the last 6 to 7 weeks, but still, when you look at his full 128 game sample size, you would say it's a down season for Corbin Carroll. But with even that being said, he's like within 5 runs of like Ohtani for the NL lead in runs scored. Like, even though it's been a down year for Corbin Carroll, like we've discussed, there's still a world where he finishes as the NL leader in runs scored, triples, has a 20 plus home run season, around 30 stolen bases, maybe a 750 OPS and like a 240 average. Like, it won't be the best, but if your worst season is still leading the league in 2 categories and still being a very dynamic player from a power speed standpoint, I think this is the worst of Corbin Carroll that we're going to see. And this second half of the season has inspired me so much that I think he's going to be all the way back in 2025. Like, I actually think if you're playing in a fantasy league with casuals and they're not checking in every day and they don't know about the Corbin Carroll second half surge, and then they go into the draft next year and they look at the stats and they're like, ooh, not very nice for Corbin Carroll. What happened to him? I think you could steal him potentially in drafts next year. I think that power is going to be back. I think we're going to see the full Corbin Carroll once again in 2025. So watch out for the Corbin Carroll bounce back in your fantasy draft next year. He could also potentially lead the league in triples, as we just discussed. He currently has, I would have to double check, but he has at least a 2 triple lead on who's ever next, potentially 3 if it still stayed the same after today's wave of games. So Corbin Carroll could potentially lead the league in both the runs and triples. And then one more fun one, Randall Grichuk right now leads the league in pinch hits. I just thought that was a fun little stat that just goes to show you the versatility of this D-backs offense and the clutchness. Grichuk leads the league in hits. Lourdes Gurriel is tied for the league lead in pinch hit home runs. Like, just so many great stats the D-backs lead the league in, and we'll be tracking those stats for the rest of this regular season. And now I want to talk about what the best D-back strength has been from 2024 in segment number 3. When you're taking in America's pastime, don't forget to hydrate with Liquid IV's Popsicle Firecracker flavor, a surefire summer hit. Tear, pour, live more. One stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Powered by LIV Hydroscience and an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients that turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, 8 essential vitamins and nutrients, always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. No more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MLB at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. All right. Let's get back to the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Let's talk about the D-backs' best strength from the season, because I saw Bleacher Report did like a little article where they said, what's the best strength of every contender in Major League Baseball? I just want to play off that because I do think what they were alluding to in the article is what has been the best D-back strength from the season, because when you look at the stats for the D-backs, the thing that sticks out the most is obviously the offensive numbers. The fact that the D-backs are like number 1 in like almost every offensive category. Like, they're the number 1 run scoring team. They're like right there in OBP and slugging, and since June 1st or July 1st, like home runs are right there as well. Like, this D-backs offense can do it all offensively, and that's what I think their biggest strength is. Not just offense, but offensive versatility. The many different ways that the D-backs can slice you up to win a ball game. I think that's what makes them so special, because if you see their numbers over the last couple months, this is one of the best home run hitting teams now in Major League Baseball. That's not something that they were doing last season. You look at their home run totals. Since July 1st, the D-backs are second in the National League in home runs. I don't know what that stat is actually after today's game. Maybe they're leading it, but that's now a pretty large sample size of almost 2 months of the D-backs being a power hitting team. And that was a metric that was missing from their repertoire last year. You had the Martes, the Carrolls, and the Walkers, but you're not enough consistent home run power. You only had 4 guys with 20 home runs the last season. And right now, with the way Gurriel and the Carrolls are cooking, feels like the D-backs might surpass that number this season. The D-backs still have the speed and chaos from last year. You still have Corbin Carroll and his ability to run. You still have Jake McCarthy, his ability to run as well. Alec Thomas isn't there, but Pertomo's no slouch. Christian Walker's a smart base runner. Gurriel Marte are smart base runner. So you can still steal. You can still create chaos, as we see. Sometimes when you're stealing that base, that ball gets thrown into center field, right? Especially when it's like a Corbin Carroll or Jake McCarthy out there running. Feels like that ball gets thrown around a lot when those guys are on the bases, creating pressure for opposing pitchers and catchers. We see the D-backs great in small ball situations, right? You need to get that runner home from third. They're great at that. Ketel Marte leads the NL in sacrifice hits. I believe it was either sacrifice hits or sacrifice flies. I forget which one, but regardless, they're great at moving the runner over, laying down a bunt if they need to. Like the D-backs, they can hit the home run now if they need to, but they can also just lay down the bunt. They're not afraid. Jake McCarthy, Corbin Carroll, we know you guys are hot right now. Just lay down a bunt and see if you can get on base. D-backs not afraid to do that at all. Clutch hitting, D-backs are the best. Runners in scoring position, average OPS in the NL. Like, they can do it from that standpoint as well. Late in games, their perseverance, right? At the beginning of the season, if the D-backs are trailing after 7 innings, it felt like the game was over. Now, if they're trailing after 7 innings, I go to FanDuel and I place money down because I feel like they're going to make a comeback in every single game. Their clutch hitting is fantastic. Their late game hitting is fantastic. They're patient at their plate. You look at their walk rate, OBP, top of the league. Guys like Geraldo Perdomo, great at bats. Jock Peterson, great at bats. Guys like it's usually the guys you don't even think about. Even Del Castillo puts together some really good at bats for this ball club. They're patient. They know what type of pitches they want to attack and go after. That's something we've seen from Corbin Carroll. He's not afraid to both be aggressive and patient with the pitches that he wants to hit. D-backs, they score late, but they also score early, right? One of the best teams in the sport in terms of scoring in the first inning. They like to come out, punch you in the mouth early so you could feel them, so you could feel their pressure, have your back against the wall after the first couple innings and be like, dang, okay, we're in Arizona. We're already down a couple of runs. D-backs, also, the final thing, depth at every position, basically, right? We came into the season, too many outfielders. We finally figured it out. We still have 4 really good outfielders. Jake Carroll Gurriel is a very good outfield. Then Grichuk off the bench, who we just mentioned, best guy off the bench in baseball. That's fantastic. Josh Bell has been so good for the D-backs since being acquired by this team. His numbers since being acquired, entering today's game, 824 OPS, 4 home runs. Like, he's been really impressive and he's played some solid defense, been a good facsimile of Christian Walker. He's just gonna go to the bench when Walker's back. Newman, I think, is solid off the bench as well. I don't hate him. Del Castillo, all of a sudden, fantastic catcher to back up Moreno. Like, the D-backs depth is phenomenal. They can kill you in so many different ways: power, speed, small ball, late game hitting, first inning hitting. Like, so many different ways the D-backs could kill you. This has been such a fun season of D-backs baseball. This has been a historic season of D-backs baseball by the numbers offensively, and I'm excited to see what this offense can do in the postseason. It needs to translate because I'll be very disappointed if it doesn't, but I have no qualms about it not. The depth on this team, the stars on this team, the veterans on this team, the youngsters on this team, I think all of them have this heart and passion about them. All of them have that dog mentality to them. That's why I trust this offense so much, even when they're down in ball games, even when it feels like they have no life. I always have belief that this team is going to come back in a ball game, and they were able to do that against the New York Mets in game number 2, and we might even see them do that again in the finale. I love this offense, and I'm very excited to see where the numbers are going to rank by the end of the season. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.